How did I end up here? Lying in your arms, watching city lights turn to stars.
Hi! Disclaimer here real quick, because of 2 prior failed attempts to upload this video due to it getting blocked worldwide, for 2 of the entries, specifically entries 9 and 7, all you will be seeing is stock Synthwave footage because, well, either just the trailers and the OPs of those anime got the video blocked worldwide, all the while there are channels out there that can get away with uploading full episodes of anime and are just fine, so fair use is non-existent. All I want to do was talk about anime, man. I've always alluded to talking about anime more on this channel in the past, and now it's finally the time, believe it or not. Anime has never been a major hobby of mine, but I've always been passionate about it, ever since I started watching it in 2017. I mean, sure, I grew up watching the Pokémon anime, but so did a lot of people, so to an extent, I don't really consider that my start. As mentioned, I started officially watching anime in 2017. Well, actually, the first ever anime I watched through was Hack Legend of the Twilight in 2016, which, if you want me to say anything about that one, you're out of luck, because I don't remember anything at all. That aside, my true fall down the anime rabbit hole began with High School DxD. To be fair, it was only up from there, so while it may not have been the greatest start in hindsight, it was a good decision in some senses. Besides, 16-year-old me had priorities, alright? So shut up! But since then, I have, of course, seen plenty of other anime, over 50 to be exact. The list of ones that I've seen here should be enough for you to get a decent understanding of my history with anime. The exact number, however, I'm unsure of because I've most likely forgotten 1 or 2 obscure ones I've seen over time, but nevertheless. So, as a sort of heads up, because I'm definitely afraid of copyright strikes and such, I'll only be using the trailers for said anime as the background footage, and as for the music, well, whatever I think fits, I guess. Even so, I'm still going to be taking some precautions. God, I'm really risking a lot with this list. I mean, sure, my MVs from 2019 still exist somehow, but anyway, we've stalled for long enough. I just really want to talk about anime again already. Oh, and as a heads up, the majority of entries on this list will be of the romance genre because I'm a huge fan of that genre. Do you have a problem with that? Well, if so, too bad, I guess. On with the show.
Wake up, I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
Karakai Jozu no Takagi-san, or Teasing Master Takagi-san, is a romance anime, focusing on Nishikata, voiced by Yuji Kaiji, and the titular Takagi, voiced by Rii Takahashi, as we witness their honestly adorable interactions and how they're pretty much playing 5D chess with each other, in terms of their scheming and how to get back at the other. It's a really cute, easy watch, quite frankly, and where I think it really shines is the aforementioned interactions they have with each other. The dynamic of them being young high schoolers who haven't fully gotten a grip of the concept of love yet may not be a rare one, but it's one that I think works well in this case and is super relatable. I mean, come on, you didn't know how to fully process what love was at that age, and maybe you still don't, but that's okay for a lot of people. It takes time. I just want to put that out there. Back to the topic at hand though, what makes Karakai Jozu no Takagi-san a fun watch is, of course, seeing the pranks of Takagi and Nishikata pull on each other. Maybe not so much in the case of Nishikata though, seeing as Takagi always seems to be a few steps ahead of him, or, to go back to my 5D chess comparison earlier, she's always a few moves ahead of him. Again, it's a really such a cute anime to spend maybe a Sunday afternoon watching. You're definitely not going to be losing anything other than time at most, but I think it's a good time, so you should watch it if you haven't. There's my official endorsement of it.
Wake up, I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
If you've been watching anime for a considerable length of time, there's a high chance that you've at least heard of Toradora, and rightly so because it is considered a classic romance anime in the eyes of many, and was actually my favourite anime for the longest time. Obviously, Toradora being at number 9 on this list means that it isn't anymore, but don't take that fact as any form of opposition to it now because I still think highly of it, hence why it's present on this list in the first place. But I should be able to clarify myself over with. Toradora tells the story of 2 unlikely lovers, Ryuji Takasa, voiced by Junji Majima, and Taiga Isuka, voiced by Rii Kugimiya. Ryuji's intimidating nature usually gets him a bad rap, being labelled as a delinquent, while Taiga contrasts him in both aspects, appearing as cute on the surface but harnessing a feisty personality. Together, they form a alliance of sorts after they learn the others has a crush on their respective best friends. Yusaka Kinemura, Ryuji's best friend, voiced by Hirofumi Nojima, and Minoru Kushieda, voiced by Yuri Horii. Being a romantic comedy, you expect that shenanigans ensue, but underneath the otherwise common genre where you can usually predict certain tropes and whatnot, there is a really nice love story being told between the two, as they slowly fall in love with each other over their 25 episodes the anime runs for. Once again, it's arguably generic, but I personally really enjoy the more simple stuff sometimes. A love story doesn't need to go full balls to the wall with its plot and just barrage you with plot points left and right, which maybe something that comes to bite me in the ass later on regarding another entry, but we get to that when we get to that. Also, despite the romantic comedy label, there are moments where you wouldn't be blamed for thinking otherwise. There is a surprising lot of intense character drama in places, as you would expect for a romance. There is a particular episode that focuses on one of the main cast that I neglected to mention, Ami Kawashima, voiced by Eri Kinemura. Initially, Ami's a sweet airhead kind of girl, but in reality she's a self-absorbed and rather arrogant girl, playing up the airhead persona around others. This is because of her lifelong affiliation within the spotlight. She's a model, which is implied early on. Skipping ahead a bit here, her personality folds when it's revealed she's had a stalker for a long while who tries to take pictures of her without her consent. Obviously, this goes without saying, this act is abhorrent, and this leads to her having to build up the courage to confront him, eventually doing so, destroying his camera in process in such an intense but rather gratifying manner. That's just one example of the many poignant character moments throughout Toradora, and honestly, it isn't my favourite one, but it's a great one to highlight. Now, there are a couple of aspects about Toradora that I either disagree with or I'm indifferent to, but overall, they're honestly mere peanuts compared to everything that I think is good about Toradora. So apologies for not highlighting any examples here, but this isn't the right type of video for that. Maybe some other time. Toradora is a classic romance anime, and I'm really glad that I've seen through it 3 times. I'm serious about that, by the way. There isn't typically a lot of anime I do that with, so take that how you will. And it is also the only anime I will willingly watch the English dub of. Again, I'm serious about that. It's actually really solid.
Wake up. I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
The third romance anime in a row, and the second romantic comedy anime in a row, is Tsururodori Children. I'm positive that a lot of people in the anime community may disagree with me on putting Tsururodori Children below Toradora, seeing as the latter offers more substance in a lot of ways, but I can't help liking what I like, okay? I generally think Tsururodori Children is better. But anyway, to explain what Tsururodori Children is, as I've been doing for the entry so far, TC is an amazing depiction of young love in many different scenarios, featuring many different characters and their various struggles in either not knowing what love is, or the unfortunately classic scenario of not knowing how to confess their love. It's simple, but I've said this before on this channel, there's charm in simplicity, and TC has it in spades. Much like Kalakai Jozo no Takagi-san earlier, Tsururodori Children is a really pleasant, easy watch, made easy by its shorter than average episode length, rarely exceeding 12 minutes, so once again, you're not going to lose anything other than time, and even then, you're losing very little time in comparison to other romance anime. I may not have a lot to say again, but if you ever need something to entertain you for a little while on a slow day or whatever, then Tsururodori Children will definitely scratch that itch.
Wake up. I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
From here on out, I'm referring to this as just Hitoribochi. I'm gonna lose my mind if I have to say the whole name every time. Disclaimer aside, Hitoribochi is easily the most wholesome anime on here, uncontested. Admittedly, I never expected myself to like Hitoribochi because of how it's just doesn't really seem like my type of anime, you know. But as you can guess by it being present here, I obviously did like it. A lot. But with that in mind, what is Hitoribochi and why does it melt my icy heart? Well, the basis is that the titular Bochi Hitori, voiced by Chisaki Morishita, has recently moved to a new school. A scary enough prospect in its own right, but it's made worse by the fact that Bochi suffers from extreme social anxiety, which is scarily relatable sometimes, but nevertheless, as you can imagine, this leads to some very comedic moments, such as Bochi fainting when overwhelmed, which happens easily, or planning everything out to a T just to avoid social contact. It's a very easy to watch, wholesome and generally fun anime that follows Bochi in her quest to, well, make friends, and watching her progress a long way is just, it's, to repeat myself, wholesome. The cast is also just really good. Each friend Bochi makes is unique in their own way, having their own distinctive quirk about them that just makes them all a joy to watch. A great example would have to be Sakoto Rokita, voiced by Yuko Kurosi, who is one of the later friends that Bochi makes. Her little quirk is that she's obsessed with ninjas and literally just makes origami shurikens all the time. It doesn't sound like much for a character, sure, but it's unique and just really endearing in a way. It's hard to explain. But you know, that's also how I would describe the entirety of Hitoribochi. Endearing. No matter how icy your heart may be, even if it's made of stone, Hitoribochi will put a smile on your face. It's a feel-good anime, and sometimes we need stuff like that in our lives.
Wake up. I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
Charlotte is a deceiving anime. But having been made by PA Works, also known for anime like Angel Beats and Another, I guess that's par for the course. Regardless, all things considered, I will admit that Charlotte isn't exactly the greatest anime out there, and even kind of falls in quality after a certain point, but I still really like it, even if just for the first half of the anime. I've alluded to it enough now, but Charlotte can be split into two parts. The first 5 episodes are akin to a slice of life type anime, and the following 7 are more akin to a dark mystery. I think that sudden change in direction kind of hinders the anime slightly, but much like with Toradora, that's maybe a topic for another day. With that said, what I want to focus mainly on here are the first 5 episodes, but I will touch upon the latter half. So, as mentioned, the first 5 episodes are akin to a slice of life anime, which, if you weren't aware, is a genre that depicts events and experiences that are maybe more mundane in life. A lot of anime are tagged with this genre, including many popular ones such as Anohana, Fruits Basket, Clannad, and The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. My apologies for butchering that pronunciation. Okay, so in reality, Charlotte isn't actually a slice of life anime. It's tagged as drama, more specifically, but it has that slice of life feel to it, you know? And to elaborate more on this, Charlotte takes place in a world where people have supernatural abilities, but these are kept a secret by those people attending a special academy, Hoshinori Academy. My apologies for butchering that pronunciation again. It follows Yu Otosaka, voiced by Karuki Uchiyama, who's obtained the ability to slip into the minds of anyone he desires for 5 seconds after obtaining the ability from a passing shooting star one night. He gets caught cheating on a test one day by Nayo Tamori, voiced by Ayana Sakura, who later coerces him to join the academy along with his sister Ayumi Otosaka, voiced by Mama Asakura. He is then later coerced into joining the student council, who have a task of tracking down others with supernatural abilities who abuse their powers. And for the following few episodes, they do just that while having genuine character moments. Some may find the initial few episodes uninteresting, but I have enjoyed watching through them every time I have, because it's all really nice and has some genuinely comedic moments here and there, all while waiting for things to go to crap by episode 6. I have really given thought to whether I should talk about what happens in the second half. I even mentioned that I would towards the beginning of this entry, but I honestly think the change in both direction and tone is something I recommend you go watch for yourself. I know I'm otherwise indifferent to it, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't effectively shock me, and I'd be lying if I didn't say it was also interesting at the same time. I realise I have sounded pretty down about Charlotte through the segment, but I assure you that I do genuinely really like Charlotte. In fact, it was my 3rd favourite anime for a good while, so there's that for you. Either way, it is most definitely worth your time if you're interested in drama anime, or if you're a fan of PA Works and stuff. I haven't seen all that stuff so far, but Charlotte is definitely one of their best at this time. Other than that, Tamori's worth a watch of the anime alone. I mean, just look at her smile. How can you say no to that? And while I have the chance, can I just say how much I love Charlotte's OP, Bravely You? It's such a beautiful and catchy piece, and it's actually my absolute favourite anime OP. So if one time you want to make a list talking about my favourite anime OPs, don't count on that, then do you already know what number 1 will be?
Wake up. I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
The positioning of this one may be quite surprising for anyone who's seen a past review of mine, or know me personally, but I have my reasons, of course. To address the elephant in the room, yes, Violet Evergarden used to be my absolute favourite anime. At the time, replacing Toradora in the top spot, and remained there until maybe early this year, I can't recall exactly. As mentioned, I have done a review video on Violet Evergarden in the past, the only anime review I've done so far, so for the sake of not repeating myself to a great extent, I will keep the segment brief. For the summary at least, Violet Evergarden is a slice of life drama anime that follows the titular Violet Evergarden, voiced by Yui Ishikawa. Violet is a former child soldier who was specially raised to decimate enemy lines and was quite proficient at it. Having been a former child soldier exposed to the atrocities of war, she's a walking husk in terms of emotions, and lacks understanding of various emotions, specifically love, which is all the more heart-wrenching considering the final words she was left with by the one she held dearest. Through her development, she takes up work at a postal service, working in the position of an auto-memory doll, a literary assistant who aids people in getting their thoughts and feelings into writing on paper. Such a position you may think is unfitting, considering, well, Violet's circumstances, but it's a learning experience for her, a great one at that. Throughout the 12-episode series, Violet's placed in all different kinds of scenarios that are all a part of her journey of self-discovery and what those words she was left with meant, and each scenario is beautiful and often heartbreaking. I will say this now, this show is built for tears. If you're in touch with your emotions at all to any extent, this show is quite the tearjerker. I remember watching Violet Evergarden for the first time back in the summer of 2019, and even though I was arguably more emotionally unstable from a lack of sleep from the previous night, starting at episode 3, I cried at every episode, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. A lot of these scenarios, or even just a few, are more likely to break you in some way. One in particular I'm going to talk about episode 7. In my review, I simply recommended to just go watch it for yourself, but seeing as it's one, if not my favourite moments in the anime, I want to talk about it here. So be wary of spoilers if you plan to watch through the anime at any point. Here's another timestamp for you to skip past them. Okay, so in episode 7, Violet is tasked with being an auto memory doll for Oscar Webster, voiced by Satoshi Taki, a playwright who is struggling to finish his final piece because of writer's block. The play Violet is assisting Oscar with writing is about a girl named Olive in a fantasy setting. It's revealed later on that Olive is actually based on his late daughter who passed away from some kind of illness, Olivia. A very depressive setup already, but where it will really break you is towards the end. For the ending of the play, Violet suggests Olive use a magical power soul to fly back home to her parents, the power soul being a key part of the episode that serves as the plot point for Oscar to tell Violet about his late daughter. As a way to demonstrate to Oscar what she had in mind, she takes the power soul to the lake and attempts to use it to fly a short distance, flying with the power soul being something that Olivia always dreamed of doing. And this scene is just... It's beautiful. I've used the scene in a couple of my video intros in the past, and it's easily one of the most iconic scenes from the anime, and during this, while Oscar is watching Violet elegantly flying through the air for a short period, Oscar sees Olivia as a premonition in just this scene. It's hard for me to talk about without choking up slightly. It's just so good. As you can probably guess, the episode is about learning what grief is, and it's really effective in conveying what the emotion is. I bawled at this episode because I put myself in Oscar's shoes. What if I lost my child like he did, you know? It's such a potent episode if you're one who does that. Honestly, the way VE is built for tears, as I mentioned earlier, does make it feel cheap in some ways, kind of feel like it relies solely on that and nothing else. But that could be further from the truth, because not only is the writing for this type of show superb, but it also looks amazing. Seriously, this is probably the most visually pretty anime I've ever seen. It looks gorgeous. By the way, I've been talking about VE, you'd think it was my favourite, but that's not the case obviously. I like the next one just that little bit more.
Wake up. I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
From a tear-jerking drama to a comedy, Konosuba is quite the total whiplash, wouldn't you say? Right off the bat, Konosuba is probably the funniest anime I've ever seen. Now, being a comedy, it'd be a really bad one if it didn't make me laugh, but that aside, it's generally such an enjoyable watch every time. Konosuba is an isekai anime that focuses on Kazuma Sato, voiced by Jun Fukushima, who gets transported into a fantasy world after dying a particularly pathetic death. Isekais aren't exactly rare nowadays, being an overly crowded genre that many are either sick of or just hate entirely, including me, but Konosuba gets a pass in that regard because of how it doesn't fall into a lot of the typical tropes that other isekais do, and if it does so in an entertaining fashion. But anyway, after being transported, Kazuma finds himself sitting before a goddess named Aqua, voiced by Sora Amamiya. Aqua is an obnoxious and frankly useless goddess, a recurring joke in anime, but offers Kazuma the chance to be reincarnated into a fantasy world, and being the gamer that he is, Kazuma, of course, accepts the offer. However, before he is reincarnated, he is given the choice to take one thing with him, and in a very honestly funny twist, he decides to take Aqua herself with him. It's all really entertaining and things just kinda escalate from there, with Kazuma learning how things don't play out in that world as they would in a normal fantasy one, with them having to work for a living, and other mundane stuff that would fit right in the normal world. And while on the task of having to take down the resident Demon King causing havoc for the village they live in, they meet two other companions along the way, Megumin, voiced by Rii Takahashi, and Darkness, voiced by Ai Kayano. And to cut to the chase, they're all terrible people. Kazuma is a perverted sleaze who wants nothing more than to just have it easy in life. Aqua is an obnoxiously simple-minded girl who always desires praise for her status. Megumin is probably the least bad of the bunch, but she's reluctant in learning anything more than her one skill, being explosion magic. And Darkness, who is a powerful knight, but lacks the accuracy half the time, and is also a masochist who dreams of being married to an abusive husband. Yeah. But, you know, it's characters like these that make the show so entertaining to watch, seeing what kind of trouble they'll get into next. It's a show where you watch awful people doing awful things pretty much, which is such a unique premise that really sets itself up for comedic moments. What also makes the show so interesting is the fact that the voice actors and actresses are all recording in the same room, allowing for them to much easily bounce off of each other, compared to recording separately, which makes every interaction the characters have together feel so real and natural. It's not often that an approach like this is taken, but it's one that paid off extremely well in this case. The recording process and the writing of the show just makes for such a fun watch, and something you can easily watch through numerous times. The 2 seasons of Chrono are fantastic, as well as the Legend of Crimson movie, and season 3 of the show is rumoured to be in production, so it's safe for you to assume that I'm excited to see more of this awful band of heroes.
Wake up, I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
If I had to sum up Golden Time for you in a single sentence, then I'd say that Golden Time is Toradora, but better. Focusing on characters that are in college rather than high school, that fact alone makes the scenarios depicted that little bit more believable, and it's way easier to get invested into the characters as a result, in my opinion. Similar to Toradora, hence the comparison at the beginning, Golden Time is a romance comedy drama. GT centers around Banri Tada, voiced by Makoto Furukawa, a character who, due to a tragic accident, has lost all of his memories pertaining to his hometown and his past. However, he decides to begin life anew in Tokyo after befriending Mitsuo Yanagisiwa, voiced by Kaito Ishikawa. Shortly after beginning his new life, though, he has an encounter with Kogo Kaga, voiced by Yui Horii, and yes, quickly, that is the same VA that played Minoru Kushieda in Toradora, which I didn't know until doing research, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, Kaga serves as the catalyst for what will be a very unforgettable year for Banri. It's a very nice approach to a romance plot that I don't see too often. I think the execution was very well done. Throughout, GT is full of sweet and genuine character moments as Banri falls in love with Kaga and vice versa, but also intense character drama moments that really make these characters believable and have you relate to their scenarios. It's a very well written romance drama, the type that really keeps you invested throughout, but despite all my praise so far, I do have some complaints. See, what is typical in a lot of romance stuff, especially anime, is that it can fall into the overly common and generic romance tropes, a lot of which I'm not all a fan of. I won't highlight the specific moments where these tropes occur as to avoid spoilers, because I very much believe GT is worth your time, but I will list off some of the tropes it falls victim to. Amnesia is the obvious one, given the plot, but I'm willing to let that one slide here as the story is centered around the facts somewhat, and isn't just a plot point. The second chance trope, in which the two lovers get back together, and the misunderstanding trope, which is just... I hate this one. I hate this trope so much, where one of the characters misunderstands the context of the situation and assumes the worst. It's overused to hell and only serves as padding, pretty much. But my complaints about the tropes aside, which are kind of redundant seeing as the romance genre as a whole has built a lot of these, I actually loved my first viewing of Golden Time earlier this year. I was invested in the story, I was invested in the characters, and I just really wanted to see more Kaga. I think she's so genuinely cute. I love her design character. In all seriousness though, every character is interesting in their own right, and if you aren't personally a fan of the plot itself, I do think the characters will keep you coming back. And when it comes to these types of things, where there are multiple girls in the running for the main character's love, which there is to an extent, the right one does come out on top, I can assure you that, so the ending doesn't disappoint. All the way through, GT is a fantastic romance anime, and one of my absolute favourites, if you can tell by it being at number 3 here. Oh, and to talk about the OPs again, GT's first OP, fittingly named Golden Time, is a great one too. It's just so upbeat and cheerful, and it's one I don't see talked about often unfortunately, which is a real shame because it's really good. And GT's second OP, The World's End, is comparatively somber, but fits the sort of change in tone that the second season goes for.
Wake up, I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
Compared to the entry prior, I do have less to say, but don't take that as me saying AC isn't as good. I'm just terrible with words sometimes. To summarise what AC is real quick, a giant yellow octopus thing has separated the moon into a permanent crescent, and the students of class 3E are given the task to assassinate the thing. Seems easy enough, right? Wrong. It's actually near impossible, seeing as it has super speed and can pretty much predict your every move. Oh, and it's also called Kuro Sensei that becomes their teacher. Yeah. It's a very wacky plot in all honesty, very anime if you will. But despite how it appears on the surface, it's actually much deeper than you think. It's an anime that's focused on character growth, with each student of class 3E getting development at least one point in the show. And I'm just going to say this is my absolute favourite cast of characters in any anime. All of them are so well written and developed, and they're all so unique to boot, all having their own strengths and weaknesses. A fantastically diverse cast. Because of aspects like this and seeing how the class as a whole grows in their attempts to assassinate their teacher, it makes the anime such an enjoyable watch. Main or supporting, every character in the spotlight is great. Wow, it's almost as if I value good characters in media or something, who would have thought, having mentioned that before. And again, the fairly wacky premise aside, the anime has a lot of intense, heartfelt character moments and a genuine sense of urgency at times with a few of its scenarios. It may seem like I'm being cheap again, but I do genuinely recommend you go watch AC for yourself. Please, I'm begging. It's so goddamn good. I mean, it's my favourite after all, so that should be enough endorsement I guess. I really love AC, I genuinely really do. It's got fantastic characters, amazing writing, an intriguingly involving narrative, and it's just so good.
Wake up, I know what's real. Escape reality. Hardwired.
I'm kind of cheating here with this one because of how AOT, the anime, is not finished yet, and probably won't be until early mid-2023 sometime, but it's Attack on Titan. Why wouldn't it be on every favourite anime list ever? So, yeah, Attack on Titan. What can I say, really? It's literally the biggest anime in the world, having surged in popularity in recent years thanks to the anime and such. However, despite AOT's unprecedented success, I will acknowledge the fact that not everyone has the same path in life, and though they may be familiar by name, they probably don't know what it is exactly, despite what the name suggests, so it'd be unfair for me to just not give a summary. With that said, there will be spoilers obviously, so if you want to avoid them, skip to the timestamp you see here on screen right now to avoid the story summary. In retrospect, they're very minor spoilers, but I felt like the warning was still worth the mention, so there you go. So, Attack on Titan takes place in a world where mankind was slaughtered by these creatures known as Titans way back in the past. Titans are these humongous humanoid-like creatures that live off humans for sustenance. A world where humans are no longer on top of the food chain is an intriguing concept in and of itself, but AOT has a lot more to offer than just that concept alone, let me tell you. Taking refuge behind giant concrete walls, the remaining humans have survived for over a century without a single Titan attack, but one day, mankind received a grim reminder, leading to easily one of the most iconic scenes in the anime.
あの壁は50メートルだぞ。やつだ。
With the Titan breaking down the walls, other Titans swarmed in to slaughter humanity once more. Not every human was eaten, however, but the mother of one Eren Yeager, voiced by Yuki Kaiji, was one of those eaten, and from that day, Eren swore revenge upon the Titans. Alongside his adopted sister, Mikasa Ackerman, voiced by Yui Ishikawa, and Armin Artlet, voiced by Marina Inoue, Attack on Titan follows their journey to wipe out the mysterious creatures. Of course, everyone who has seen the show knows that there's a lot more it has to offer under the surface of the initial hook, and yes, it most certainly does. But that's part of the intrigue that keeps people watching. I really don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the show yet because, yeah, those people do exist. Excuse my profanity, but Attack on Titan is fucking amazing. Truth be told, I didn't actually start watching Attack on Titan until like late 2020, either because my ignorant ass just didn't care enough, or the birdcage concept of AOT where you're ruled over by infinitely more powerful beings was just too terrifying. But man, do I feel like an utter moron for not having watched it sooner. The sense of intrigue and mystery it has going for it is just so good. There are plenty of other aspects about it that I love too, like the characters and, of course, the action. Seeing the David and Goliath type fights go down in the show were always a blast, and they're always so well animated and hype. To touch on the characters real quick, Attack on Titan has such an amazing cast of characters. Highlights include obvious ones like Eren and Mikasa, the latter being my favourite character in the show. But there are other supporting characters that really stand out too, such as Annie Leonhardt, voiced by Yu Shimomura, Sasha Blouse, voiced by Yu Kobayashi, Han Zoe, voiced by Roby Park, and of course Levi, voiced by Hiroshi Kamiya. And by the way, those are only just a few. I just don't want to keep you here all day, that's all. Point is, you're going to have some character you'll get invested in, or maybe a whole bunch of them. They're all super well written and developed. A couple of other things I really admire about the show is both its constantly evolving narrative that it's not only able to easily pull off thanks to excellent foreshadowing, but also the show's willingness to kill off characters. Unlike a lot of other shonen anime where characters just won't die, a few come to mind, AOT is not afraid to kill off its cast, either in favour of moving the narrative forward, or for the shock factor. Of course, it's more the supporting cast that dies, but as I said, you may actually get invested to some extent in a lot of these characters that eventually die off, so yeah, that's pretty bold of the show. A lot of the time, AOT is a very heart-wrenching and even horrific show to some extent, especially when it comes to character deaths at various plot points. And I will admit that some scenes were hard to watch, but I'm not exactly the hardest guy out there, so to talk about AOT's OPs here because I want to. The show has so many amazing ones, and easily has my favourite bunch of any long-running anime. Even if I don't commonly watch too many long-running anime, but nonetheless. In terms of my absolute favourite, that has to be Red Swan, the OP for part 1 of season 2. Arguably, it's very unfitting for a show that AOT is, not being as hype or having a sense of urgency like the other ones, but I appreciate the more bittersweet tone that it has, and it's an OP that, in hindsight, really stabs you in the heart when you know what's to come. We'll see the end, will be the end. Just damn. I've said this already, but I feel like an idiot for not getting into AOT sooner. After watching it through, I understood why it was so popular, and after finishing up the series by reading through the manga, which came to an end in May, I understand now that nothing can ever replace Attack on Titan. My indifferent thoughts about the ending aside, Attack on Titan was one hell of an experience. I wish I could have been there from the start. Please, watch it if you haven't. It may still be ongoing, so I can understand why you'd want to hold up until it finishes, but you will kick yourself for not having started it sooner. I can guarantee you that. I had to keep this segment as brief as possible to avoid going overboard and extending the video by another 30 minutes, but maybe one day I'll give AOT the review treatment it deserves. Lord knows it does deserve it, but as per usual, no promises of course. And with that, we're done. This list has been in the works for quite a while. The idea has been there for months now, but I never knew how to go about it because anime is not really my forte. I don't tend to watch as much anime as I do play video games, and my channel really focuses on it, really only featuring in AMVs. Makes me feel bad that all the anime that Atom recommends to me I don't tend to get around to, and it just all sits there in my queue forever. And speaking of Atom, a huge thank you to him for helping me with writing the script for this. The script for this video was probably the most difficult one I've had with writing in recent memory, so I really appreciate him helping me in getting it started, and providing me with some guidance on my writing flow. Thanks man.